video by Lucky Ghost. Solo players saved the genre. I actually agree that in MMOs, solo players have saved the genre. Let's see what he has to say.
Lucky here, and today we're going to talk about something interesting. I'm making this video because I realized something. Most of us are loners. Most of us don't have someone to play our favorite MMO with.
No, I think most of us have just been oversaturated by social interactions within games, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Discord, all that stuff. There's so much, like you can get social interaction. Social interaction is now so cheap compared to what it used to be before. Before, MMO was the only way to get social interaction on a global scale. Now it is inexpensive. Right now it's like free programs to just talk to random people. You even have that shuffle program where you just like can talk to a random stranger, right? So, you know, it's like I feel like people are just like they need a break from being social, and that's why we're antisocial as a result.
With when we log in every day, but we keep coming back in spite of that. And even if we do have someone to play with, sometimes we just want to play alone. Take a look at Asmongold, who started his YouTube channel 8 years ago, teaching people how to solo group content.
What's up, y'all? This is your boy Asmongold. I'm going to show y'all how to solo Conclave win. What's up, y'all? This is your boy Asmongold, and today we're continuing the series on how to solo Glory of the Cataclysm Hero. What's up, y'all? This is your boy Asmongold, and today I'm going to show y'all how to solo List Resort as a warrior.
And even those of us that do have friends have a hard time agreeing with those friends on what MMO to play and when, resulting on the people that do have friends also playing MMOs alone. This was made more apparent than ever when I tossed up a video on YouTube about MMOs that you can play alone or without friends, and it absolutely blew up. You guys devoured this thing.
The video was kind of funny because it was just top 8 MMOs. Not even 8 MMOs you can play solo. It was literally the top 8 MMOs currently. So it's kind of funny to watch.
Shedding some light on the fact that, hey, a lot of us spend most of our time playing MMOs solo, and we recognize that. MMORPGs are more and more turning into RPGs that happen to be online. Is it the developers implementing it, or is it us demanding it? Why is it that most players...
I feel like it's better if you can play an RPG and then have an online content. Imagine Elden Ring, but you could meet random people in the world. Obviously, going into boss rooms, that would always be solo. But like, imagine you're playing Elden Ring and you can see other players fighting mobs and shit, right? Or like, you can go and gank random players in the world. Obviously, you would need a much bigger world, but just imagine that. That sounds like a much more fun experience to me than your regular fucking MMORPG. Now you have to, like, with Elden Ring, you have to, you know, use that finger, go into someone's world. He's notified you're going to the world. The sense of danger is not as big as when the person just doesn't know he's about to get ganked, right? And that's just the PvP aspect. PvE aspect, you see someone in the world, he's having a hard time, and you go and you kill the mob he's about to die to, you know, shit like that. The dragons would have made a much bigger fucking foe, where it's like you just go to a place where there are dragons, and alone you're gonna get fucked, but you can bring people, you know, shit like that.
Today log into their massively multiplayer game and spend the majority of their time playing alone. These are all interesting questions, but perhaps the most interesting question of all is it ruining the genre? Is the fact that MMOs are becoming more and more of a solo experience contributing to the decline of the genre? I'm going to try to answer all of those questions today.
I don't think so.
In the early days of the MMO genre, you needed a group for just about everything, and even if you could solo something, getting a group was generally a lot faster and more efficient. If you played an MMO back in the early 2000s,
but just because you're in a group doesn't mean you're social. You're just in a group.
You probably had a pretty tight-knit circle, or at least a guild that you spent a lot of time with. You probably even remember a lot of those players today. They were people that became not just online acquaintances, but actual friends that you logged into the game for.
I was always antisocial, even back when being social was expensive.
And grouped up with and ran through content together. It was just part of the game, and it was just what you did. And if you didn't, well, you wouldn't be getting a whole lot.
I was just ahead of my time, you know? I was antisocial before it was cool.
done, and you'd probably quit. Except players didn't quit. MMOs were never more popular than they were when they were forcing introverts to join guilds and get things done. When MMOs were hard instead of easy. But today, the most popular MMOs seem to be designed around the player that is not interested in joining guilds, around the player that doesn't want to challenge in their questing experience. Dungeon finders, raid finders, not to mention the fastest way to level is usually what? It's the main story quest, which is almost entirely a solo experience carved straight through the MMO. We are at a point now where it's often less productive and less efficient to play our massively multiplayer games with other players. Grouping up used to be the fastest way to level, if not the only way to level. Battles were difficult and it wasn't uncommon for there to be significant penalties for dying. You were all in it together. You actually needed each other, and every role in the group was incredibly important as a result. There was always a lot on the line, creating a lot of moments to bond with the players around you. If you survived that sketchy pull or managed to take the boss down, you'd celebrate. I still remember waiting for high-level healers to come
Dude, I'm definitely a minority in this, but like whenever I beat a hard boss, I never felt the satisfaction of like, hell yeah, brother, we did it. It's more like it's finally over, right? It's almost always it's finally over. On almost every fucking boss in an MMORPG, it's most of the time it's finally over. And not that the boss is finally over, it's because I have to wait for the group to catch up. Even if there's like, you know, in Final Fantasy, for example, we were 4 people who came from WoW and 4 randoms that we found Final Fantasy. 2 of the randoms, bro, like it took them forever to be like, to understand the mechanics. It was so frustrating where it's like 6 people could already call out the mechanics. We literally decided that we used to have like 1 caller, but he was like, he wasn't like designated caller, he just was doing it because he knew the fight. So I was like, I came up with the idea, hey guys, you know what, since most of us know the fight and while these guys are still learning, let's just take turns in being the announcers of what mechanic is coming up, so like we're better at this overall, right? Because we were so bored. I was like, fuck it, let's just do that. Like, let's have someone else announce now, because he needed a break as well. He was losing his shit already.
Me in games like Lineage 2 to get hours of my experience back when we had died and lost it on death. I also remember actually having to use crowd control abilities to survive when someone in the group tab targeted the wrong enemy by accident.
I miscalculated.
Everyone needed to be present and give it their all. But not just that, there was an incentive to bond with those players. There was an incentive to perform at your best. If you had a tank with clean pulls that could maintain aggro, or a healer that kept everyone standing, that was special.
It's like the norm. It's more like, okay, maybe back then, I don't remember. Right now, if a healer can't keep everyone standing, you replace the healer. If a healer can't keep everyone standing, that's what expected of you. You're the healer. You're not special. The only time the tank is special, if the tank knows the pulls so well, and you just keep fucking going. You know exactly when to pull the next mob. You know exactly when to pull more. You know exactly when to go into the boss. You understand people's cooldowns and shit like that. Which is like, good luck. Good fucking luck finding tank like that, by the way. Right here. I don't tank anymore. Yeah. The thing that pisses me off the most is Red Paladin. You would see tanks, and this is so fucking frustrating. I pop my cooldowns. We killed the pack. I still have like my buffs are still up. And the tank is not pulling. And you're like, bro, what the fuck are you waiting for me to not do any damage? Get the like. So I start pulling for him. Because I'm like, bro, I need to do damage. Like, I have, like, my cooldowns are up. My wings are still up, bro. Pull shit. I have 15 seconds. Pull shit. We're gonna fucking nuke it. So you pull for the tank. He's like, oh, I don't wanna. You're doing the pulls, you tank. Like, fuck off with your ego. That's the most annoying part. And that's why people prefer to play solo sometimes. Because not to deal, even though it's like a 1 out of 10 Mythic Plus, you get a tank that degenerate. It's 1 time out of 10 too many. To the point where, like, you know what, bro? I wish I could do Mythic Plus solo with bots. Like, it would be so much better. Even if the bots are slower, I would still probably time it than with these fucking potatoes. Yeah, because, like, the negative social interaction does not compensate for 10 positive social interactions.
You remembered those players, you added them as friends, because that's the only way you would make sure you had a group to do that stuff with the next day. There wasn't a dungeon finder that you could queue into while watching Netflix and YouTube. You had to be social and you had to try. But don't get me wrong, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. If you think Tinder is hard on average looking nerds today, you should try being an average damage dealing DPS in the early 2000s. When tanks and healers logged into the game, they got swiped right on more than supermodels on Tinder. They were instantly messaged by desperate damage dealers begging for a group so they could actually leave town. But just like on Tinder, those tanks and healers swiped left on almost all those requests. They were already spoken for. They had already fallen into a static group. Desperate damage dealers had already locked them down. It was the best time to be a tank and a healer, and probably the worst time to be a damage dealer.
It never changed though. It's still the best time to be a tank and a healer.
But man, when you found that click, a group that you look forward to logging in with and playing with every day.
Ventrilo, bro.
You shoot the breeze and comms while grinding through a dungeon until late in the night, knowing you'd all log back in the next day and maybe try out that new leveling spot or that new dungeon that you were all finally high enough level to do. But on the flip side,
what is he talking about? I got to vent. You're in vent with them for the event. The event is over, like dungeon, whatever. Fucking alright. Alright, guys, I'll see you next time. Never see them again. What the fuck are you talking about?
while some players were in that group,
Ventrilo's, by the way, Wrath Polishing days. So those days I remember, bro. Unless it's your guild, you will never see those people again. Fuck that.
making those memories, there were plenty of other players signing in just to realize they weren't going to get a group in time for it to be worth it, and they'd sign back out again after trying for sometimes hours. In other words, players were spending as much time looking for a group as they were being in a group. I remember standing in town looking for groups in Eden and Lineage 2, or in Juno in Final Fantasy 11. I was a DPS in both games, and there were a lot of nights where I didn't get a group.
Just go fucking play the game. Stop asking for a carry. Holy fuck.
Because I signed on too late due to school or work or life. And while I miss the camaraderie that came with forcing everyone to play together all the time, I don't miss that part of it. And even if you were one of the lucky ones that managed to form a static group, it only lasted so long. One person would level too fast, or one would level too slow, or one would go.
That's why I never managed to form any groups. I would always be ahead of everyone because I didn't have a life. Still don't. But like, yeah, it was impossible for me to stay in the same group because I was always ahead of any group I joined. Maybe you would find one player who was in the same speed as you, but even then, like, then you start competing with him because you're a fucking idiot like me. Start competing with him. It's like, well, he logged off. I'm not logging off, man. I'm just gonna play all night. Then tomorrow he'll log in like, buddy, I'm way ahead of you. What now, bitch? And then it's like, oh wait, now I don't have a group.
Go full Leroy Jenkins.
Roy Jenkins.
And your odds of playing together the next day weren't great, but I'd take those odds right now because at the moment indicators are suggesting that a recession is on the way, which brings me to the sponsor of today's video, Masterworks. Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan, said that what's coming could be worse than a recession. So what are experts doing to prepare? They're following recently released guidance from BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, who says that a normal portfolio of stocks and bonds won't cut it anymore. For 2022 and beyond, BlackRock recommends diversifying with alternative assets, and of all the alternatives out there, only one was personally recommended by BlackRock CEO Larry Fink: contemporary art. Probably because contemporary art has outpaced the S&P 500 for the last 25 years by more than double, and it appreciates more than gold, real estate, and the S&P when inflation is high, at a whopping 33% annually. Repeating, of course. That's why I've partnered with Masterworks, because they're helping you secure
this
your
is literally the same argument that people had with gold before. They just give you an arbitrary comparison to something else, and it's like, see, this one's gonna be way more valuable than the other thing. Meanwhile, what the fuck is the other thing? No one even knows, right?
future by offering investments in the same contemporary art. This is not NFTs. This is fractional shares of actual paintings by legends like Picasso and Banksy.
So it is an
Masterworks
NFT.
sells the paintings that you are invested in, you get a potential return. And the 6 paintings that they've sold so far have averaged a 29% net annual return, even through COVID, a bear market, and record high inflation. Now, of course, past performance is no guarantee of future results, but I think this is absolutely an option. Consider.
But also, why would anyone buy art during a recession? Like, it's like, what the fuck?
when diversifying your portfolio. With inflation still crazy high and stocks still crazy low, Masterworks is seeing a record demand. But you can skip the waitlist by clicking the link down in the description below. Thanks for listening, and let's get back to it. Okay, so like I was saying, it's nearly impossible for a group of people to sync their lives together in a way that would allow them to progress through an MMO at the exact same speed. And even if you did have a static group and you were committed to staying in that static group, there would be days where you couldn't play because that meant you would outlevel the people in the group. And there's the rub. That's the reason that MMOs focused on having a solid single player experience began their rise to dominance. If the MMO had a fleshed out enough solo experience, you always had something to do. If your friends weren't on, or if you didn't have any to begin with, you could still make great progress in the game. And this was a welcome change. And more than ever before, we're seeing MMOs focus on the solo experience all the way from early on in their development. Here's a clip from the recent Ashes of Creation developer update.
Ashes of Creation is looking to fulfill both that solo-oriented mind in gameplay, as well as the group and social experience.
We just saw that.
Kind of started this, in my opinion. It had a very casual questing experience that would take you all the way through most of the game.
I love that he's using the animation from the guy that Blizzard hired just to make this Wrath of the Lich King stuff.
But initially it lacked the Dungeon Finder. Later
So
on,
good.
toward the end of the Wrath of the Lich King expansion, the Dungeon Finder was finally added. No longer were we walking to dungeons and forming groups in zone chat. We are now queued into an instance and tossed into a group that may or may not acknowledge each other's existence in group chat. We successfully got rid of boring hours of standing around looking for a group, but we also successfully got rid of a ton of social interaction in the process. You don't need to make friends. You can just queue up for a dungeon when you want to, on your schedule. It didn't matter if you were great at the game or bad at it, you'd get tossed into a group all the same. There was a lot less social accountability. One inevitable downside to this, dungeon content began to be designed for these types of groups. Random groups of strangers were more prone to giving up on a group as soon as it was apparent it wasn't going to be a smooth dungeon experience. They knew they could simply queue up for a dungeon group later, and as a result, commitment to the group was lacking, and you couldn't have content as difficult as you used to. People just wouldn't stick around through the wipes. The solution was to make dungeon content easier. When's the last time you used a CC ability on an ad? No way. You pull that bad boy in and melt it down with everything else. Relying on players to CC mobs was tedious. It required...
You still gotta do it in Mythic Pluses though. I also do when I play solo in the world leveling, right? I pull like, if I'm prod pally, I pull like 8 mobs. I will be CCing to an extent.
Hard communication. Cleaving it all down was easy. Everyone could be on the same page without even having to talk to each other. And I see this in almost every MMO. Dungeons are generally pretty easy. They generally don't require a lot of communication, and as a result, they often end up being pretty forgettable. You romp through it, you melt everything inside, and then you forget the people and the content that you experience. It'd now be...
Well, I mean, there's no choice, bro. Like, there's no... Unless, like, again... Oh, when was the last time? Some Mythic Pluses, there was to an extent an interrupt rotation, some bosses or something like that. But as far as like stuns go and whatever, I think there was like, yeah, I mean, you expect people to know what they're doing, so there's no need for communication. Do you want people to not know what they're doing, so you would have to tell them what to do? Like, I feel like that's even worse design, and I don't think that's a solo play experience, expecting other people that you play with to know what the fuck they're doing. I don't feel like that's a solo play experience.
Fair to describe most MMORPGs as single-player games with some group content tacked onto the side. All of the biggest MMOs like Final Fantasy XIV, ESO, Guild Wars 2, World of Warcraft, they've all got tons and tons of solo content for you to do when you log in. Oftentimes they have way more solo content than they do group content, and they've succeeded all the more for it. Players have spoken silently and with their wallets. They gravitate towards the MMOs with a fleshed out solo experience.
Yeah, they prefer the RPG MMO, not the MMORPG. Yeah, I get it.
They want the option to group up on their schedule and not somebody else's, and sometimes they want the option to not have to group up at all. So this begs the question, why play MMOs at all if you're the person that doesn't want to interact with anyone at all? And it's a fair question,
never mind. I know what game it is.
But I think it's the fact that MMOs are an unending story. They're not just about interacting with other people. They are about the journey, the days, the weeks, the months that we put into them. They'll be relevant for years. It always feels bad when you're watching a good show and you go to put on the next season only to find out there isn't one. The show got canceled years ago. Or maybe this calls for a more direct comparison, such as
it was that show with the guy who plays Lucifer in the show Lucifer, where he's like this private doctor for like the rich and all that shit, and only got one season. I was so disappointed. It's like, bro, really? It was a good show. And it's like the rating was good. And then I see another show from the same studio of the same year, and it's like it had shit rating, but that one got a renewed show. Like, what the fuck, man?
Enjoying a single player game, and you have an epic fight, and you get that bittersweet feeling because you know a final battle when you see one. It's epic, it gives closure, and you're completely aware of the fact that you're likely only a
He clearly has not played World of Warcraft anytime in the last 4, 5, 6 years. A closure, an epic fight. Oh my
few lines of
god.
dialogue and maybe a cutscene away from putting the game down forever. The character you're leveling up, the skills you unlock, the cool cosmetics you found, you'll never see them again, nor will anyone else. You beat the game and you'll probably never boot it up. It's a conflicting moment of wow, that was amazing, and damn, it's over. And that's where MMO
I don't know. I also didn't feel that way with Elden Ring when I finished the game. I didn't feel that at all. I was like, okay, that was cool. And but no, I don't understand this nerdgasm, bro. It's so weird. Oh my god, this is so fun. Like, I don't get it. It's so fucking weird. What is wrong with you people?
RPGs come in, they don't end, or at least you hope they won't anytime soon. You don't have to walk away from the story and the character and the hero you leveled. You'll be jumping back onto it in the next expansion. There's also the fact that playing alone isn't always a conscious choice. It's not always a decision made through social anxiety. Sometimes it just happens that way. I don't consider myself a solo MMO player, but if I look back at my recent experiences in MMOs, I have a lot of time spent playing solo. It wasn't even a conscious decision I made, but my schedule fell out of sync with the people I tended to group with. I played the MMO for half the day and then maybe went to work on a YouTube video. The next day, they were levels ahead of me and it didn't make sense to group. Or on the flip side, I'd be the one degenning the MMO the way we MMO players sometimes do, and someone in the group would have work, a new girlfriend, a new kid, or school, and they'd fall out of sync. And there's one critical problem that's arisen with the new progression rates of MMOs today. Even though you're only a day or two behind your friends, you might as well be on a different server while you're leveling up. They're working on different dungeons, different zones, and they're grabbing different materials, and while of course completing completely different quests. Fortunately, once you hit max level, that problem mostly tends to fade away, but you have to get to max level first, and so few players do these days. Look at New Worlds. Look at Lost Ark. This is why it's so critical for games to have a solo-friendly leveling experience. As much as we all
think
dream
New World has a decent solo leveling experience. Just leveling sucks in New World. That's about it. Like, what?
Jumping into an MMO with our friends and leveling through the whole thing together, life just gets in the way. Most of us have either school, jobs, significant others, or
but that's why you make two characters. One character you only play with your friend, he only plays with you, and the other character you play solo, and that's that. That's what I used to do in order to combat this. I would literally make a new character to play with my cousin. He would only play it for like 20, 30 levels in WoW, and then he would quit. I would always make a new character to play with him, and I was like, okay, that's fine, whatever, right? It's like, it's not impossible, but like, yeah, you would need to make an extra character for that.
Or some combination of the four that require varying amounts of our time. So let's circle back to the question at the beginning of the video. MMOs were more popular than ever when they forced us to play together, when they lacked dungeon finders and raid finders.
No. That is not the reason they were more popular. First of all, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Did they stop being more popular, therefore people had, like, the devs had to introduce Dungeon Finder and Group Finder, or did the Dungeon Finder and Group Finder happen first, which then made the games less popular? I would argue fervently that the popularity went down and then Group Finder came about. Or there was a trend of, like, a downward trajectory, and they had to make it accessible to more people. I would say that would be a bigger cause, okay? Wrath of the Lich King is probably the worst example you can use because majority players played it for the Lich King. You could see the drop as soon, not even in Cataclysm, the drop happens during the last patch of Wrath of the Lich King. No one cared. ICC is over, no one cared. Boom, dip in the subscribers. Has nothing to do with solo play or group play. It's just the interest in the game, because that was it. That was the end of the story. Arthas died. So using World of Warcraft even as an example, not really good example. But every other game, they have to do it because no one likes spending hours in town trying to find a group. It just doesn't work. right? I do not agree that the MMO genre became less popular because they introduced the solo mechanics. I think the genre would have died if they didn't. I feel like there would be no game with over 1 million players if they didn't introduce it at this point in time.
But these days, MMOs are often built with the solo player at the forefront of their design. Do MMOs attract fewer players because of this change? Or do MMOs attract fewer players because we changed? WoW's population peaked at
because
around
we
12 million
changed,
current
100%.
subscribers all the way back in 2010.
Again, see, that's what I mean. You cannot use World of Warcraft as a comparison because the reason Wrath of the Lich King was so good was because of, was because of Warcraft 3. Also, this is a weird one. So what you don't see in this graph, there was actually supposed to be a dip here and then an increase here for the new expansion. So it was like there's like a V here because there's a massive dip here, and then there's new expansion. Let's try it out, and then it went downhill. So this is not the most accurate, but it is what it is.
It's been on the decline since, and no other MMO has even come close to reaching its concurrent player base. Why is that? Is it due to switching the focus to the solo experience?
Not even close.
I don't think so. The most successful MMOs today have the best solo content. I think we changed, so the MMOs had to follow suit.
Also, yeah, again, like majority of MMO players now aren't old men. Like, let's be real. They're like old men, I'm saying, but like boomers, right? Late 20s to like mid 40s. You know, that's your range for the players who play it now, right? I would say the oldest player who played World of Warcraft Classic was maybe around 18, 19-year-old, okay? At 20 years, boom, he's, he's 39, right? So on average, you're dealing with people who are like 29 to 39 years old. Okay, that's your demographic. These people have lives, jobs, wives, children, all that shit. They don't have time to stand in town and look for a group. I mean, it is what it is, right? It's like you're not gonna do it. It's a waste of fucking time, and even thinking about it, you won't even log into the game. So yeah, so you had to have these solo mechanics in these games in order for people to even play them. Like I said before, the genre would have died if they didn't.
We were once okay with standing in town for an hour looking for a group. It was all new and shiny, this whole going online and grouping with people from around the world. Most players had never really experienced that before, but the novelty wore off. The excitement of being able to log into a game and play it with other people wasn't new anymore and no longer outweighed the disappointment of standing in town looking for a group. And not only that, every week new online games were popping up that could also satisfy that same online desire. The only difference is they had you in a match in 5 minutes. Today, being subjected to an hour-long wait in town, trying to form a party in zone chat is a quit moment for most players.
And some people are gonna be like, but look at WoW Classic. WoW Classic was so successful. Look at Season of Mastery, bro. WoW Classic had like 400,000, 600,000 players. Season of Mastery had 4,000 players. 1% of the player base stayed for Classic. It's a garbage game. Everyone knows it. Season of Mastery proved it. Everyone jumped ship for the nostalgia. Nostalgia is over. No one wants to replay it again. TBC's out. Everyone jumped ship. Wrath of the Lich King is out. No one's playing TBC. You can do Season of Master for TBC. You'll probably also have 1% of the player base. Wrath of the Lich King is probably the only expansion you can keep. And honestly, if you do a Season of Master for Wrath of the Lich King, just start with Uldir right away. Just skip Naxxramas, start with Uldir and ICC, and you're good. Right, everything else in Wrath is like, who cares? So, and even then, once you finish Wrath, people will drop out. Not because Cataclysm is out, but because that's it. Game over, you know?
There's too many other options now. Too many other multiplayer games that will have you
The only way I see them somehow making Classic work, make it Classic all the way to Wrath, not as expansions, but as patches, right? And it's like, every patch is gonna be like increase XP, increase loot rate, increase like all of these things, and every patch, like next patch is out, next patch is out, next patch is out, 1 to 2 months. Then maybe players will play from Classic to Wrath, and then they will redo it, but you have to increase the experience and the drop rates. It's the only way. I doubt they're gonna get all the way up to mop Classic for the Warlock with the Ashbringer too. to make an appearance.
Instant. Some say MMOs are dead as a result, and I don't agree with that. Recent MMO launches have been insane. There are still millions of players looking for and hoping for an MMO to grab them the way that the genre once did. You saw it twice in the last year, with millions showing up for the launches of New World and Lost Ark. Neither of those games held on to all of their players, but there were a lot of reasons for that prevent those games from being indicators of a dead genre. Lost Ark's pay-to-win nature ensures that it will only ever see limited success here in the West, despite actually being a solid game. And New World, it came out
I think it's doing fine. Even if you have 200 to 300,000 players, they're not bots. I think that's more than fine for what Lost Ark is.
Half-baked. It wasn't finished, but it's now making the same pivot the rest of the major MMOs did after their launches. It's hard focusing on that solo experience. It's completely revamped and fleshed out its questing experience so that you can follow a main quest chain all the way through the game. It also added a dungeon finder. It's realized that these are the things that most MMO players crave these days. It's
not so much crave, it's they need it. Because no one's gonna waste time not being able to queue into a dungeon. No one's gonna waste their time fucking waiting for a group, looking for a group manually. Not because we're spoiled, because we just don't have time for this shit. Like, why would I waste time on this? I want to go into a dungeon. Okay, you know what? Fuck it. I'll just go to play to a different MMO that allows me to go into a dungeon. Like, fuck. That's why.
This working for New World, in anticipation of all this new content, combined with its new zone and new weapon, its player base is up 40% in the last 30 days. Wait, scratch that. I just refreshed the page. Make that 46% in the last 30 days.
Yeah, it's not... Things are not looking good for New World, I'll tell you that much. I'll tell you that much. But again, it looks like a good game. Maybe, like I said, dude, this is the funniest thing. I literally said it when New World was launched. I was like, it will be good in 2 to 3 patches. Not knowing that there are bugs, not knowing that there are anything. Any new MMO that is released ever in the last fucking decade, you need to wait a few patches before there's enough shit for you to do to make the game worth your time. Now, that being said, $40 and no monthly sub for New World is still an amazing deal. It's still probably the best priced MMO out there after Guild Wars 2. So, in that regard.
Days. Looks like their focus on the players without friends is starting to pay off. So has the solofication of MMOs ruined the genre? I don't think so. The developers didn't make MMOs solo. We did by gravitating towards the MMO that offered the stronger solo experiences. When I'm playing MMOs, most of my time is spent doing...
I want more solo challenges though. I want more Mage Tower with like maybe a ranking system. I want something like Palace of the Dead for WoW. I want something like Heaven on High for WoW. I want a new Heaven on High and Palace of the Dead for Final Fantasy 2, you know? I feel like those solo / group environments are great. I wish Torghast had its own solo progression or group progression type of thing that would be like Palace of the Dead. But obviously, knowing World of Warcraft, they abandoned fucking Torghast. During the expansion, they abandoned Torghast. Idiots.
I want to do when I want to do it. I am literally one of the players taking advantage of the solo experience MMOs are now adding. I frequently tune into Asmongold, who has millions of people that would love to play with him and see him doing the same thing.
And he's doing solo player.
Or grinding up his gathering levels in New World. He's also...
Yeah, but let's be real. No one's watching him play the game. They're there for the interaction because... Like, I would say 99% of his gameplay is him interacting with chat, and then when the moment of truth comes, like check the corpse to see if he got the item, then, okay, sure.
So taking advantage of the solo opportunities. I think
still don't know what he's
nice
hunting there.
To go at your speed. Sometimes you just want a solo chill activity. When you're a content creator trying to keep up with chat, or a dad trying to keep up with children, or students trying to keep up with class, the flexibility of having the solo content to dive into on those nights where you only have an hour or your friends aren't available, it makes all the difference when you're deciding what game to boot up. And as history shows, when one game offered the experience of standing in town trying to form a group and another offered anything else, we gravitated towards anything else. And word like that, it's not so surprising, is it? I think the best thing MMOs can do now is have a ton of solo content waiting for us when we need it, and a ton of group content waiting for us when
100%, I agree. I'm not saying that like the solo content should outweigh the group content in the sense of like of difficulty. I think the top tier of an MMORPG should be the raid and the high like Mythic Plus stuff like that. But it doesn't mean that there shouldn't be any solo stuff that you can do that are just as hard. Like for example, the Mage Tower was fantastic, right? And people would actually do it even if you didn't offer that like the best fucking mog for the Ashbringer, okay? Like just think about the Ashbringer makes you want to play again. But yeah, but that wasn't like the main reason. It was a fantastic reason, fantastic incentive of why you would keep doing it. But it wasn't the main reason, just the solo challenge. And honestly, if you have like just a Torghast type of floors built in where you get to climb and a leaderboard of who climbed the highest, dude, like there you go. Torghast is fixed. People just climb it to be on the leaderboard. And like you'll have many players just doing fucking Torghast for no rewards, just to be on the leaderboard. It's dumb, but it is true.
We want it. And that's the big difference. A lot of times when you're doing the solo content, it's because you need it. It's because there isn't really an option to do the group content at the moment because you don't have people available to do it or you don't have the time to do it. In conclusion, solo content didn't ruin the genre. It kept it relevant. We're just not willing to stand around town for hours at a time looking for groups anymore. There's too many other online games that can put us into a game instantly. What type of player are you? Are you the solo player or the group player or a little of both? If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe
both.
for
Majority solo, but both. Yeah, for
MMO
sure.
content and to help out with Algorithm Senpai. I appreciate it. And if you agree or disagree, let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to hear your take on it. This is just my opinion. These are just my ramblings, so you're certainly welcome to disagree. And as always,
Alright, that was Lucky Ghost. As always, I mean, that's the second time I see his video, second video that I see by him. Overall, both are fantastic videos, good editing, good everything. I like what he said. I pretty much agree with his comments as this video showed. And yeah, go to his channel, give him a sub, give him a like, give him a comment, and if you are so inclined and generous, maybe give me one too. But anyways, that was the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.